Dad perfect events. I've never been the type to call ahead when I'm coming home early. It's just a habit I picked up over the years. I like seeing the surprise in my wife's eyes when I walk through that door. Usually, Patty's face lights up and she runs over to give me a hug like we're still newlyweds, even though we've been married for 30 years. My name is Ted Parker. I'm 58 years old, and that December afternoon changed everything I thought I knew about my life. I'd been driving for a rideshare company since retiring from construction work 3 years ago. My back just couldn't handle carrying those cement bags and climbing scaffolding anymore. The rideshare gig kept me busy and brought in decent money to supplement our retirement savings. That day, December 18th, I decided to call it quits early. The coastal town was quiet, and I'd already hit my daily quota. I was thinking about getting home to start preparing for the holidays with Patty. Christmas had always been our special time together. Heading. Out already, Ted? Asked George Martinez, another driver who always parked near the terminal. George was my age, retired police captain, good friend. Already made my numbers for the day, I replied, putting my phone in my shirt pocket. Want to surprise Patty? George laughed and slapped me on the back. 30 years married and still with surprises. That's how you do it, buddy. I got into my 2014 Honda Accord, bought it when I quit construction, drove slowly through our neighborhood, thinking about everything Patty and I had built together. Our house wasn't big, but it was decent. Took us almost 25 years to pay it off. I'd done most of the repairs myself. We'd saved every dollar we could while she worked as a nurse until she retired 5 years ago. As I turned onto our street, I noticed something strange. There was a car I didn't recognize parked in our driveway. A black BMW, pretty new. And through our front window, I could see people moving around inside our house. I parked down the street and walked slowly toward the house. Something didn't feel right. Patty never had visitors without telling me first. As I got closer, I heard voices coming from inside. Professional-sounding conversation, serious tones. But what stopped me cold was seeing Patty sitting alone on our front porch steps, her head down, shoulders shaking. My wife was crying. I approached quietly, my heart pounding. "Patty, what's wrong?" I whispered, sitting down next to her. She looked up, startled. Her eyes were red and puffy. "Ted! I wasn't expecting you so early. What's going on? Why are you crying?" She glanced nervously toward our front door, where I could hear those voices continuing. "It's nothing, just—" She started, then stopped when we heard a man's voice from inside. "Mrs. Parker, we really need to move forward with this today. The estate planning documents need your husband's signature, and we need to establish the medical evaluation timeline." Estate planning, medical evaluation, chill ran down my spine. "What are they talking about, Patty?" I asked, keeping my voice low. My wife squeezed my hand, but something felt off about her grip. "Ted, I need to tell you something. I've been worried about us, about our future. These people, they're here to help protect our assets." Before I could respond, the front door opened and a man in an expensive suit stepped out. He was probably mid-40s, perfectly styled hair, expensive watch. Behind him came a woman I didn't recognize, older, maybe 50, carrying a briefcase. "Mr. Parker," the man said with a big smile, extending his hand. "I'm Anthony Coleman, estate planning attorney. Your wife has been telling me so much about you." I didn't take his hand. "Estate planning? What kind of estate planning?" "Well, sir," Coleman continued, still trying to sound friendly, "Mrs. Parker contacted our firm because she's concerned about protecting your assets as you both enter your senior years. There are some vulnerabilities that we can help address." "Vulnerabilities?" I looked at Patty, confused. "What vulnerabilities? Our house is paid off. Our retirement savings are solid. What's this really about?" The woman stepped forward. "Mr. Parker, I'm Dr. Dorothy Phillips. I specialize in cognitive assessments for seniors. Your wife mentioned you've been having some episodes lately." "Episodes?" My blood started to boil. "What episodes? I haven't had any episodes of anything." Patty stood up quickly. "Ted, please don't get upset. I just mentioned to them that you've seemed confused lately, forgetting things, getting angry about stuff that doesn't matter." I stared at my wife. This was complete nonsense. "Patty, what are you talking about? I'm not confused about anything." Coleman jumped in smooth as silk. "Mr. Parker, this is exactly why we need to get ahead of these issues. If we establish a proper power of attorney and trust structure now, while you're still competent, it protects everyone. Still competent? The way he said, it made my skin crawl. I think there's been some misunderstanding, I said firmly. Nobody's establishing any power of attorney, and I don't need any cognitive assessment. Dr. Phillips opened her briefcase. Mr. Parker, I have some simple tests here, just basic questions to establish baseline mental function. It's completely routine for men your age. Men my age, I was starting to lose my patience. Lady, I run a business driving people around this city every day. I handle money, navigation, customer service. My brain works just fine. That's when I noticed something that made my stomach drop. On our porch table were some papers, and I could see Patty's signature on several of them. How long had these people been here? What had she already signed? Patty, I said carefully, what did you sign? She wouldn't meet my eyes. Just some preliminary documents, nothing major. Coleman picked up the papers quickly. Just initial consultation forms, Mr. Parker. Nothing binding, but I caught a glimpse of letterhead that said something about guardianship proceedings. Guardianship? For me? I want everyone off my property right now, I said, standing up. This meeting is over. Dr. Phillips closed her briefcase with a snap. Mr. Parker, I really think you should consider the evaluation. Your reaction right now is quite concerning from a psychological standpoint. My reaction to strangers trying to declare me incompetent? Yeah, that's real concerning, I shot back. Coleman handed me a business card. Mr. Parker, when you're ready to have a rational conversation about protecting your family's future, give me a call. Mrs. Parker has my number. After they left, Patty and I sat in our living room in heavy silence. Finally, I asked the question I was afraid to hear. Answered. How long has this been going on? She took a deep breath. About 2 months. Ted, I'm scared. We're getting older. What happens if something happens to you? What if you can't make decisions anymore? So you decided to make them for me? It's not like that. Anthony, Mr. Coleman, he explained how we could protect our assets. Put everything in a trust. Make sure I'm taken care of if something happens. Something was seriously wrong here. Patty, we already have wills. We have beneficiaries set up on our retirement accounts. Why didn't you talk to me before bringing strangers into our house to discuss our private business? She started crying again. Because I knew you'd react like this. You always think you can handle everything yourself. That night, I couldn't sleep. While Patty tossed and turned beside me, I went over everything that had happened. Something about the whole situation felt like a setup. The lawyer's expensive clothes, the way he talked about protecting our assets, Dr. Phillips with her psychological evaluations. I got up early the next morning and called George Martinez. If anyone would know about scams targeting seniors, it would be a retired cop. George, I need some advice about something weird that happened yesterday. I told him the whole story. When I finished, there was silence on the other end of the line. Ted, George said finally, that sounds like elder abuse preparation to me. They're trying to establish that you're incompetent so they can take control of your assets. But Patty's my wife. She wouldn't. Buddy, I've seen this before. Sometimes the spouse is the one being manipulated. Sometimes... He paused. Sometimes they're in on it. That possibility hit me like a punch to the gut. George, what should I do? First, don't sign anything. Second, you need to document everything. And third, you might want to talk to a lawyer of your own. I spent that morning driving around town, thinking, 30 years of marriage. Had Patty really been planning this behind my back? Or was she being manipulated by these people? When I got home, Patty was on the phone. She hung up quickly when she saw me. Who was that? I asked. Just my sister, she said, but she wouldn't look at me. I decided to test something. Patty, I've been thinking about what happened yesterday. Maybe I should get that evaluation after all. Her whole face changed. She looked relieved, excited even. Really? Oh, Ted, I think that's so smart. Dr. Phillips said she could fit you in tomorrow if you want. The eagerness in her voice told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't about protecting our assets. This was about taking them. Actually, let me call Dr. Phillips myself, I said. Get her number from you. Patty hesitated. I have her card upstairs. I'll get it for you. While she was gone, I did something I'd never done before in our marriage. I picked up the phone and hit redial to see who she'd really been talking to. Coleman Law Offices, answered a receptionist. I hung up quickly. So she'd been talking to the lawyer, not her sister. When Patty came back with the business card, I made my decision. You know what, honey? Let me think about it over the weekend. We'll call Monday. That afternoon, I drove to the office of Carol Murphy, a lawyer George had recommended. Carol specialized in protecting seniors from financial abuse. Mr. Parker, Carol said after I'd explained everything, what you're describing is a classic setup for adult guardianship fraud. If they can get a doctor to declare you incompetent, your wife could petition the court for guardianship. Then she'd have control of all your assets. But we're married. She already has access to our joint accounts, not to your retirement funds, your house, your individual accounts. As your guardian, she'd have control over everything. She could sell your house, cash out your retirement, put you in a nursing home. My hands were shaking. Carol, what do I do? We need evidence of what they're planning. Do you have a way to record conversations? I learned how to use the voice recorder app on my phone. Carol also recommended that I start documenting every interaction, keeping copies of any papers, and gathering evidence of our actual assets. That weekend, I told Patty I wanted to meet with Coleman and Dr. Phillips again. But this time, I want to understand exactly what we're signing up for. She seemed thrilled. I'll call Anthony right now. The meeting was set for Monday afternoon at Coleman's office. I wore a wire, just my phone recording in my shirt pocket like Carol had taught me. Coleman's office was fancy, leather chairs, expensive art, the works. Dr. Phillips was there too, along with Patty. Mr. Parker, Coleman began, I'm so glad you've decided to move forward with protecting your estate. Before we start, I said, I want to understand exactly what you're proposing. He spread out some documents. It's quite simple. We establish a trust with your wife as the primary trustee. We also set up a durable power of attorney so she can handle your affairs if you become unable to do so. And Dr. Phillips evaluates my mental state. Dr. Phillips nodded. It's just to establish a baseline, Mr. Parker. So, if there are any questions later about your capacity when you sign these documents, we have professional documentation that you were competent at the time. But something in her wording bothered me. What do you mean, if there are questions later? Coleman jumped in. Well, Mr. Parker, given your age and your wife's concerns about your recent behavior, it's possible that at some point your mental acuity might decline. This protects everyone. What behavior? What has my wife told you about my behavior? Patty spoke up for the first time. Ted, you've been forgetting things, getting confused about directions when you're driving, getting angry about small stuff. This was completely false. Patty, I've never gotten lost driving. I use GPS like everyone else, but I've never been confused about directions. Coleman made a note on his pad. Mr. Parker, difficulty admitting cognitive decline is actually a symptom of cognitive decline. That's when I realized this was a complete setup. Everything I said to defend myself would be used as evidence that I was incompetent. Tell me about the trust, I said. Who controls the assets? Your wife would be the trustee, Coleman explained. She'd have the authority to manage investments, sell property, make financial decisions for the benefit of the trust. And what happens to me? You'd be the beneficiary. She'd take care of you. Dr. Phillips leaned forward. Mr. Parker, your wife is very concerned about your welfare. She's told me about some troubling incidents. What incidents? Patty looked uncomfortable. Ted, last week you forgot where you put your car keys. And you got confused about what day it was. I stared at my wife. I had looked for my keys for 2 minutes before finding them in my jacket pocket, and I had asked what day it was because I was thinking about scheduling a doctor's appointment. Those are normal things, Patty. Everyone misplaces their keys. Coleman was writing everything down. Mr. Parker, your wife is also concerned about your driving. She mentioned you've had some near accidents. I've never had any near accidents. See, Dr. Phillips said to Coleman, as if I wasn't there, he's showing classic denial patterns. That's when I understood. Everything I said would be twisted. If I agreed with their concerns, I was admitting incompetence. If I disagreed, I was showing denial and lack of insight. I need to think about this, I said, standing up. Coleman's friendly mask slipped for just a second. Mr. Parker, your wife has been very patient, but she's genuinely worried about you. If you won't cooperate with a voluntary arrangement, there are other options. What other options? Well, she could petition the court for an emergency guardianship. If she can demonstrate that you're a danger to yourself or your finances, there it was. The threat. "I'll call you," I said, and walked out. In the parking lot, Patty caught up with me. "Ted, please, they're just trying to. Help us." "Help us what, Patty? Help you take control of everything I've worked for?" She started crying. "It's not like that. I'm scared, Ted. What if something happens to you? What if we lose everything?" Looking at her tears, I almost believed her. Almost. But then I remembered her excitement when I agreed to the evaluation, her lies about her phone calls. That night, I called Carol Murphy and played her the recording. "Mr. Parker, this is exactly what I was afraid of. They're setting up to have you declared incompetent whether you cooperate or not. We need to get ahead of this." Over the next week, I did something that broke my heart. I investigated my own wife. I hired Michael Torres, a private investigator George recommended. I had Carol review all our financial accounts. I started keeping a daily journal of my activities to document my mental clarity. What Michael found destroyed me. Patty had been meeting with Coleman for 3 months, not 2. She'd already transferred $12,000 from our savings account to a new account with only her name on it. She'd gotten quotes for selling our house. And worst of all, she'd been telling people around town that I was declining mentally and that she was worried about my ability to handle our finances. "There's something else," Michael told me when he called. "Coleman isn't just her lawyer. They're having an affair." I sat in my car outside Michael's office, staring at the photos he'd taken. Patty and Coleman at a restaurant. Patty and Coleman at a hotel. My wife of 30 years kissing another man. Everything made sense now. This wasn't about protecting our assets. This was about stealing them. I called Carol immediately. "I want to file for divorce, and I want to sue Coleman for legal malpractice and fraud. Mr. Parker, are you sure? Once we start this, there's no going back. Carol, she's been planning to have me declared mentally incompetent so she can steal my life savings and run off with her lawyer boyfriend. Yeah, I'm sure." The next phase was the hardest thing I'd ever done. I had to pretend everything was normal while Carol and I built our case. I agreed to meet with Dr. Phillips for the evaluation. But this time, I brought my own doctor, Dr. Richard Phillips, George's brother, who was a psychiatrist. "I want an independent evaluation," I told Dr. Phillips. "If I'm really having cognitive problems, I want a second opinion." Dr. Phillips looked nervous, but she couldn't refuse without looking suspicious. Dr. Phillips's evaluation took 3 hours. Cognitive tests, memory tests, psychological assessments. When it was over, he was very clear. "Mr. Parker, you're in excellent mental health. Your cognitive function is well above average for your age group. Anyone suggesting you're incompetent is either mistaken or lying." I had his written report within 2 days. Meanwhile, Carol was building our legal case. She'd found out that Dr. Dorothy Phillips wasn't even a licensed psychiatrist in our state. Coleman had been working with her to file false competency evaluations for other seniors. "Mr. Parker, what your wife and Coleman are doing isn't just elder abuse, it's organized fraud. We're going to contact the district attorney." The trap was set for the following Monday. I told Patty I was ready to sign all the documents. Coleman was so confident that he invited Dr. Phillips and even brought a notary to his office. What they didn't know was that Carol was in the next room with a court reporter, and I was wearing a real wire this time, provided by the DA's office. "Mr. Parker," Coleman said, spreading out the papers, "today we're going to take care of your future once and for all." I signed everything they put in front of me: power of attorney, trust documents, even a preliminary guardianship petition that Patty could file if needed. But here's what they didn't know. Carol had already filed for divorce on my behalf that morning, with all our evidence attached. She'd also filed complaints against Coleman with the state bar and against Dr. Phillips with the medical board. The documents I was signing were worthless because I'd already moved our assets into a protective trust that Patty couldn't touch. After the signing, Coleman was feeling pretty confident. "You know, Mrs. Parker, we should accelerate the timeline. I think we can have the guardianship hearing within 30 days. That's when Patty showed her true colors. Can we move faster? I want to list the house before spring. The market's really good right now." "And the retirement accounts?" Coleman asked. "I'll need access to those as soon as possible. Ted's been talking about some crazy investment ideas. I need to protect that money before he does something stupid with it." They were planning to cash out my entire retirement fund. 30 years of contributions, plus employer matching, plus compound interest. Almost $320,000 that I'd saved for our golden years together. I kept my face neutral, but inside, I was dying. This woman I'd loved for 3 decades was planning to steal my life savings and leave me with nothing. The meeting ended with handshakes and smiles. Coleman told me I was doing the right thing for everyone. As Patty and I walked to our cars, she actually hugged me. "Ted, I'm so proud of you for doing this. You're going to be so much happier when you don't have to worry about all these financial decisions." That night was the longest of my life. I lay next to my wife, knowing it was probably the last time, knowing that everything between us had been a lie. The next morning, Carol called. "Mr. Parker, the DA wants to move forward with criminal charges. Are you ready? I'm ready." At 10 a.m., police officers arrived at Coleman's office with a search warrant. At 10:15, they arrived at our house. Patty was in the kitchen making coffee when Detective Sarah Walsh knocked on our door. "Mrs. Patricia Parker, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit elder abuse, financial fraud, and filing false documents." I watched them put handcuffs on the woman I'd thought I'd spend the rest of my life with. She looked at me with complete confusion. "Ted, what's happening? Call Anthony, tell him to fix this." "Patty," I said quietly, "Anthony's being arrested too." The next few months were a blur of court dates, depositions, and lawyers. But the evidence was overwhelming. The recordings, the financial transfers, the fake psychiatric evaluation, Coleman's history of similar scams. In the end, Coleman got 2 years in prison and lost his license permanently. Dr. Dorothy Phillips got 6 months and was banned from practicing in our state. Patty pled guilty to avoid trial. She got 1 year of house arrest and 3 years probation. She also had to pay back the $12,000 she'd stolen, plus legal fees for both sides. The divorce was finalized 6 months later. I kept the house, worth about $450,000, my retirement funds, and most of our savings. Patty got her car and her personal belongings. As I write this, it's been a year since everything happened. I'm still driving rideshare part-time, but mainly because I enjoy meeting people, not because I need the money. The house feels different now, but not necessarily bad. I've got my financial security back, and more importantly, I've got my dignity back. George Martinez introduced me to his widow's sister, Barbara, and we've been having coffee together once a week. She's 3 years younger than me, retired teacher, lost her husband 2 years ago. Nothing serious yet, but she's kind and honest. And after everything I've been through, those qualities mean everything. Sometimes people ask me how I didn't see Patty's betrayal coming. The truth is, when you trust someone completely for 30 years, you don't look for signs of betrayal. You assume the person you fell in love with is still there. But here's what I learned. People change. Sometimes slowly, sometimes all at once. And sometimes they reveal who they always were underneath. I also learned that it's never too late to fight for yourself. At 58, I thought my life was pretty much set. I figured I'd coast into retirement with Patty, maybe do some traveling, spend time with grandkids if our kids ever had any. Instead, I'm starting over. And you know what? It's not scary anymore. It's actually kind of exciting. To any men out there going through something similar, here's my advice. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Document everything. Get professional help from people who are really on your side, and don't be ashamed to fight for what's yours. I spent 30 years building a life with someone who decided to steal it from me. But in the end, I kept what mattered most, my self-respect, my independence, and my future. That's worth more than any amount of money they could have taken. The most important lesson I learned is that you can't protect yourself from betrayal, but you can protect yourself from being destroyed by it. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them the first time. And sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the best thing that could have happened. I'm 59 now, financially secure, and for the first time in years, I'm looking forward to what comes next. Not bad for an old construction worker who almost lost everything to a lying wife and her crooked lawyer boyfriend. The hardest part wasn't losing the money, or even the marriage. It was accepting that the woman who shared my bed for 30 years had been planning my destruction while I slept peacefully beside her, trusting completely. But here's the truth they don't want you to know. When you're a man over 55 with assets, you're not just a husband or a father anymore. You're a target, and the people closest to you might be the ones holding the crosshairs.